Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're talking about tax in Thailand, and yet again, this whole notion of some sort of global shift with regard to tax policy. I think this is turning out to be a lot of nonsense. If anything, I think, especially as evidenced by the fact of Mr. Trump's re-election last week, I think we're actually pushing against this overall movement, if you want to call it, here in the world with regard to tax and this notion of, global mandatory or global minimum tax. I think it's all nonsense. I think it's created by a bunch of people in their own basically self-beneficial ivory tower feedback loop. And these folks they're, to my mind, globally sort of on the outs. I've called them the World Economic Forum people, the Davos crowd. Yeah, these folks. Now, what's the meaning of the thumbnail here? Why do we have a Wile E. Coyote with his knife and fork out? Well, it's because I've kind of felt like that's what the Davos crowd has been doing for about a year. I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. The changes in policies here in Thailand just seemed so abrupt and quite honestly so apropos of nothing. It just seemed to pop up out of the blue. It's like last year they said, oh, we're going to put Chinese police on the streets. It was like, what? Where did that even come from? And then later on they came up with digital money and we were going to have digital money. It's like, what? Who wanted that? And we're going to go into a bunch of debt for this digital money. Now this global minimum tax thing is being pushed. Again, this is another Davos thing. And for those out there who think I'm some sort of conspiracy theorist, the prime minister under this same government, in the party that's currently in this same government, who has now fallen from power, went to the World Economic Forum meeting himself. I don't know how much more evidence you need that there's at least some level of influence on this government by the World Economic Forum. I think that's clear. Meanwhile, let's dig in here. And what am I talking about with regard to global shift? Oh, wait. Regarding old Wile E. Coyote, it just feels like the wolves have been, it's like Thailand's like this debutante at a new ball, and all the old sort of libertine dudes are looking at her, trying to get an angle or something like this. That's what I feel like. The wolves are just sort of looking at Thailand with their knife and fork out because for 10 years she's sort of been insulated and kind of doing her own thing. And quite honestly was rebuilding, in my opinion. Again, you can say what you want about the last government, and there's a lot to be said. But they did start some economic programs that were at least fiscally conservative. Thailand has a good debt to GDP ratio. She has a good history of paying off her national debt. She got it done after the 90s, dealt with the IMF very professionally, very efficiently, got it done, got down the road. Yeah, I could see where the globalists, especially those in the West who are completely broke at this point because most of the Western countries are heavily in debt, with many of which I can't foresee how they get out of it. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I just can't figure it out at this juncture. Meanwhile, Thailand doesn't have these problems, and I'm starting to think that there are those who would like to lead Thailand down the primrose path, or even those in Thailand's government that may somehow benefit by taking Thailand into a less than optimal scenario. And look, all of this is problematic. I don't like seeing this at all. I wish everybody would just kind of go away and leave Thailand alone, let Thailand do Thailand's thing. But, that's not the world apparently we're living in right now. That being said, I thought of making this video after reading a recent article from the Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. Article is titled, Call for Auto Taxes to Match Global Shifts. So, as in the title, what global shift? Stop it, Bangkok Post. Stop it, all of you press people out there who are pretending that this is a foregone conclusion. It is not. Global minimum tax, this OECD, all this supranational nonsense. Thailand may join some of it, she may not, but she's going to make those determinations. It's not a foregone conclusion that this is going to happen, and I'm really tired of it being talked about as if it were. It's misleading, quite honestly. It goes beyond the point of disingenuous. It's misleading. There is no global shift. Okay, there's not people around the globe, there's not hundreds of millions of people sitting around saying, we need to harmonize our automobile taxes. That is nonsense. That said, there's a bunch of technocrats, primarily from places like Davos, etc., who think we should be, and if it was reported correctly, it would be There are those who advocate a global shift. It's not a foregone conclusion that it is a global shift. That said, quoting directly, the structure of Thailand's automotive excise taxes must align with global trends. Who says? Thailand's a sovereign state. It can decide whatever it wants to do. If the rest of the world wants to do it, fine. If they don't, fine too. Where is it that must align with global trends? Who says? In fact, it's Thailand's history of not aligning with global trends that makes her so special, not her constant alignment like some docile vassal state. It's nonsense. Quoting further, particularly the shift towards the electronic vehicle industry, says Deputy Finance Minister Paipum Rojanasakun. That said, are these the same electric vehicle producers that came hat in hand to the Thai government not 10 days ago, demanding almost or in dire need of not paying back their own state subsidies because there isn't the inherent demand for this product? Is that the same EV producers? Again, you're talking about this stuff like it's a foregone conclusion. The math and the economics are not bearing this out. Quoting further, referring to competition in the auto industry, he said, quote, the dust has not yet settled, unquote. Well then, what are you talking about? As either battery electric vehicles or plug-in hybrid vehicles could become the market leader. Quote, a tax structure that leans exclusively towards EVs may not be the answer. Well, you think? When they can't even sell enough of them that they're already making, maybe it isn't the answer. Maybe internal combustion turns out to be maybe far more efficient when you put all the inputs and everything in. Maybe a lot of the entire global EV market comes from state subsidization. Quoting further, we need to maintain a balance across the entire tax system. What does that even mean? A balance across the entire tax system. Quoting further, if the global trend favors PHEVs, that's plug-in, Thailand would still be well positioned. Similarly, if EVs are favored, we should be prepared. Well, that's a big if. As we discussed in another video, again, these companies which have been state subsidized, looks to me like can't pay back their subsidies because there's no inherent demand in the market for the product. So what are we talking about? And why are we even talking about the tax regime associated with something we're already paying for here in Thailand through those subsidies? Why are we even being taxed on these vehicles? We're already paying for it. Quoting further, he said it is clear the world is moving away from internal combustion engine vehicles. Really? In Eurasia? The most industrializing region in the world? Are they really carrying felled trees and cranes and stuff on semi-trucks run by electric vehicle technology? Is that what's really going on? Because I'm not seeing it. You know, this is what's really bugging me about all of this and why, you know, I'm not a real partisan guy and I don't usually get all that worked up regarding elections. But I got to say, last week, I just felt like a load had been lifted, not because I really care one way or the other about the politicians in America, but you could just instantly feel it. The gaslighting is stopping. You know, and that's all I can describe this as. Quote, he said it is clear the world is moving away from internal combustion engine vehicles. By whose metric? What are you talking about? This is just constant gaslighting into a narrative, a preset narrative that's not based on any reality. And that is the problem in the West. It is falling apart because the narratives don't meet with reality at all. If you read the book, The Oligarchs, about the end of the Soviet system, that's exactly what happened to the Soviet system. The rhetoric, the propaganda, everything ceased to match with the reality. And then the outcome was it just sort of collapsed. It imploded because it's not real. Again, this notion that EVs are taking over from internal combustion isn't based on any evidence that I can see in the real world. That said, quoting further, however, the government has refrained from imposing an excessively harsh tax structure on internal combustion engine powered vehicle manufacturing. Oh, thank you. Thank you so for not imposing too much of a tax. The power to tax is the power to destroy. Are you looking to destroy internal combustion engines in Thailand? Because you will destroy the economy in the process. You know, don't ask for thanks for your forbearance in not taxing us on something that's self-evidently better than what you're proposing. Quoting further, because the production lines and supply chains for this industry are still extensive. What does that mean? Oh, it employs a lot of people? Yeah, because it's employing a lot of people in something people want to buy. This whole EV thing, it's similar to socialism or USSR, the socialist republics, where they just said, we're doing this now, this is a good thing. The market isn't agreeing with it. If the market was agreeing with it, do you think that the EV manufacturers would have to rush cap in hand or cap on their head to say, hey, we're not going to pay back the subsidies to Thailand that they already took money on? If it was so efficient and it was so self-evident, why isn't self-evident? I love that line in Moneyball where they're trying to figure out who the best batter are for their baseball team. They're trying to recruit people and they're looking at their numbers, and the captain or the manager of the team says, if he can hit, why doesn't he hit good? You know, he's sitting there looking at the numbers. If these things are such a great boon and windfall to the economy, why haven't they been? Why have we continuously had to shell out public money from the public coffers to subsidize this thing? And then meanwhile, we have to hear this constant propaganda of how we need to harmonize our taxes, apparently because EVs are good or something. That said, quoting further. So as they go on in the article, and I urge those who are watching this video, go check out that article in detail, Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. They go in and start talking about all the tax structures associated with this. It's just micromanaging nonsense. I mean, this stuff has got to be straight out of the playbook of Trotsky or something. I don't know where you come up with this stuff. That said, quoting directly, the new excise tax structure for ICE vehicles effective from 2026 to 2030. So again, from 2026 to 2030, we have to have a new tax imposed upon us on vehicles we're already using on a technology that's already proven because of a new technology that's really not proven and is state subsidized. So effectively, we've already been taxed on that technology to begin with. We get taxed less if we use that technology, again, that isn't proven, that the market itself is not really demanding. We get taxed less on that, but moving forward from 2026, we're going to get taxed more on the cars we have just because they say so. That's what I'm most tired of all this Davos nonsense. It's just you putting edicts on us on things that aren't even proven. Trust the science, you said. You know, where's the science behind this? The economics certainly isn't there when the owners of these manufacturers are running to the government saying we can't pay back the money we already took to do these, to build these things, because there isn't any inherent demand to buy them to begin with. Quoting further, the new excise tax structure for internal combustion vehicles effective from 2026-2023 incentivizes production of low-emission vehicles. Who said we want that incentivized? Quoting further, and this gets more to the point. In 2026, internal combustion engine vehicles emitting 100 grams or less of CO2 per kilometer are taxed 13%, rising to 14% in 2028 and 15% in 2030. So they're going to add taxes on cars we've already bought and paid taxes on to incentivize us moving us over to an EV system, electric vehicles, which aren't even in demand, have already been subsidized. So we taxpayers are already paying for those to be built, notwithstanding the fact no one really wants them and there is an inherent demand for them. But we're going to be taxed more starting in 2026 for the cars that do work. That's communist nonsense thinking. Just a pure quintessential case in point. Meanwhile, where's the data that suggests that CO2 emissions drive anything? You know, again, that's another nice thing about this post-Trump election situation is we get to finally talk honestly about a lot of big topics. COVID's one of them, by the way, not the bailiwick of this video. But, you know, look, this climate change narrative, which was something that prior to COVID, I was perfectly happy to just kind of whatever, let the scientists say whatever on it. And then in the aftermath of that, I'm coming to find out, wow, that's just as big of a con as anything. Where is there any data whatsoever that CO2 emission has anything to do with changing the weather? And then, I mean, I'm sorry, it's just nonsense. And now we're going to have to pay more taxes on cars we've already bought and paid taxes on because they're trying to incentivize us to move over to something that's already subsidized, although no one wants it. What's the purpose of that?